So where we're at is Romans chapter 11. We got to verse 4. All right. So we just started chapter 11. Basically, is what we're doing, and now we're going on to verse 5. But from verse 2 through 4, well, yeah. We just went through verses 2 through 4, and in that 2 through 4, Paul was using the idea of Elijah as an example. He's talking about God's people, or not God's people, but the Israelite people, his people, God's chosen people, being set aside or cast away or something like that. And he's assuring them that that's not the case. We just came off of the past 2 chapters, which was talking about the sovereignty of God and that predestination thing and the choice, free will and all that kind of stuff. And just after coming off of that, then we got to the part where Paul's talking to the Israelite people, his people, talking about them if they're set aside or anything like that, or if they're cast away, because now everybody has equal footing with God now, Jew or Gentile, it doesn't matter, just faith in Jesus is all it takes to get to heaven now. So anyway, verses 4, 2 through 4, is him using the example of Elijah and calling down fire from heaven and stuff like that, and all that kind of good stuff. But even so with that, Elijah literally just he goes up on the mountain, he challenges Ahab and that's her name, Jezebel. I was drawing a blank there. He's talking to Ahab and Jezebel. He calls out their prophets of Baal, who's the Elijah had told them that it wasn't going to rain for years, and that was in challenge of Baal, who is the storm cloud. He's the rain god. So, the rain god was left unable to do anything because God had stopped the rain. So, Elijah goes up on this mountain, challenges the prophets. They make 2 altars. Whoever's God answers their prayers and accepts their offer by lighting it on fire will be the winner. You guys can go first. So the guys from Baal do all kinds of crazy things, and they're dancing around, they're singing, and they're cutting themselves, and they're screaming and yelling, and Elijah's talking trash the whole time, like, hey, maybe he can't hear you, maybe you should scream louder, maybe he's sleeping, stuff like that, which is kind of funny. So, and then after all that was done, Elijah said, enough, it's my turn, we've been doing this all day, I'm bored, let's do this. So he prays one simple prayer, boom, fire shoots down from heaven. After he soaked the altar with 3 different times, soaking it with water, built a little trough. The trough is filled with water. He prays a prayer. Fire shoots down from heaven, consumes the altar. It consumes the offering, the altar, the water, and leaves a little smoking crater right there. So you'd think a guy who could do that would be kind of untouchable, but then he finds out that Jezebel wants to kill him, and he runs for the hills, literally, to hide. And so, the point is he's telling these people, the Israelite people, they're thinking, well, we had God's word revealed to us through the law, and now you're telling me that the law isn't worth anything. The Israelites are saying to Paul, well, now you're telling me that the law isn't worth anything, that Jesus Christ came and completed the law, or was the answer to the law, and all this kind of stuff. So are we now set aside? And Paul uses the example of Elijah. No, Elijah was used. He was used mightily, and even though he got sidetracked off of things, God still continued to use him and that type of thing. And the one part that he used to make sure that he made his point clear is that he talked about what we call a remnant. He said in verse 4 that I have reserved for myself 7,000 men who have not bowed a knee to Baal. Part of Elijah's problem was he felt like he was alone. He felt like he was out there all by himself, a man without a nation, trying to stand up stand up for God amongst, all these people trying to kill him and stuff like that. And God reassured him, no, you're not alone. As a matter of fact, I have in reserve 7,000 men who have not actually bowed a knee to Baal. And that's where we got to at the end of verse 4. Now we're going on to verse 5. Now, I'm trying to look through my notes real fast. And since nothing left. So, verse 5, we'll do 5 through 7 is what we're going to talk about here. It says, even so then, at this present time, there is a remnant according to the election of grace, and of by grace, then it is no longer of works. Otherwise, grace is no longer grace. But if it is of works, it is no longer grace. Otherwise, work is no longer work. Verse 7, what then? Israel has not obtained what it seeks, but the elect have obtained it, and the rest are blinded. All right, let's stop right there. This little passage right here I think is pretty awesome because it kind of explains a little bit about the relationship that we have, or the relationship they had with God's grace and the law, but I think it translates to us very plainly and very helpfully of what our responsibility to God is and what His responsibility to us is. So, first off, Paul uses Elijah because Elijah kind of felt like he was that kind of guy, that man without a nation. The guy literally just calls down fire from heaven and scares the crowd and all that kind of stuff, and gets the Israelite people to actually kill the prophets of Baal and all this kind of stuff. So the guy's kind of on top right now, but then he feels like he's not. He feels like people are out to get him, so he feels like he doesn't have a lot of hope, and he feels like he's all by himself, and he feels like he's all alone. And I think we as a people, not just as Christians, although I think it translates to Christians very well, I think we as a people feel sometimes that we're alone. That's the thing with God. God tries to make sure that He gets us to understand that we're not alone. But as Christians, you would think that we have each other. We have a sense of unity. We have a bond with each other because of our connection with Christ. But there are times when even we can feel like we are, all by ourselves. So he kind of brings up the idea of Elijah so that we can understand that simple thing. And God's trying to encourage us by using kind of an imagery, I guess you could say, to encourage us through this story of Elijah and through this idea of Elijah. And I think he tries to encourage the Israelite people and us ultimately in 3 different ways. All right, so the first way is that the Lord assures Elijah that the majority opinion does not dictate Israel's future. All right? So the majority does not dictate Israel's future. Okay? God will see to that. Okay? He's going to make sure that He sees to that. And even more than that, the majority opinion doesn't represent what true Israel is. We've looked at, He's used other examples like, when He talked about His lineage, He said He's of the tribe of Benjamin. We talked about that, how the 12 tribes at one point in time divided. 10 tribes went crazy and did their own thing, and 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, stuck together and tried to stick it out with God and that type of thing, and became the kingdom of Judah. He's shown that kind of a thing, that there are those that may think they know or may think they have a concept of what's going on, but the majority does not dictate what the true Israelite people are. And a true Israelite, I guess you could say, is somebody that is based off of faith. I mean, that's kind of the concept of what we're looking at is faith, and it easily translates to us. You know, there's lots of people that, I was just talking to someone about this today, that there are so many different opinions, there are so many different thoughts and philosophies on different things, and how people view this or how people view that, and they're like belly buttons. Everybody's got one, an opinion, that type of thing, and but those ideas and those philosophies don't represent the majority. Does not represent the minority, nor does it represent the true Christian faith. And here it's the same way. Paul's trying to get them to understand that the majority, although they may be the loudest, aren't always the one that speak for everyone. You know what I mean? And that holds true so much for us today. That just because somebody is bold enough to speak it doesn't mean that it is true. And we need to, in ourselves, find that to be true. So the first thing he's trying to encourage us, encourage the nation of Israel, but also encourage us through, is that simple thing that the majority opinion does not dictate the minority, or does it dictate the true Israel, or those who he recognizes to have faith. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. Any thoughts or comments on that? Quick. I'm waiting for you, Sherry. No? Okay. All right.
Not yet.
Like
Second.
Mom.
Oh, Mom. Yes, go.
Well, I just was wondering, what is the definition of remnant?
Okay. We'll do that now. Remnant. So, a remnant, the actual word remnant, okay? The word remnant is a complex word. The very word itself means the remainder of a whole, okay? The remainder of a whole. That's what the word itself comes from. It means the remainder of a whole, and it's also combined with another Greek word that means those who are forsaken, or those that are left behind. And it also combines with another Greek word meaning assembled together for a purpose. Okay? So, if you put all that together, a remnant is a people that were assembled specifically for a purpose that are not the majority. Okay? So in other words, it's people left over. God used a lot of the remnant in the idea, or in the context of if there was some major disaster, there'd be people left over to clean up the mess. You know what I'm saying? That type of a thing. There'd always be someone left over to be able to do what needs to be done. Okay? In the English, it's kind of a group of God's chosen people that were brought forward at the proper time to do what needs to be done. Okay? That's what a remnant is. They're chosen. They are not the majority. Okay? And they are assembled for a purpose. Okay? Those three things are extremely important when you understand what a remnant is. Alright? That they're chosen, they're not the majority, and they are assembled for a purpose. It's not just something. I was just talking to Larry Michael about what a constable is. I was like, I don't know what a constable is. What a constable is basically is nothing. It sounds cool, like you get to be a cop or something like that. You get to be a police officer or something like that. No, you get to carry a firearm, but you can't arrest anybody. You can't give anybody tickets. You can't do anything. I mean, basically it's just kind of a title thing in gesture there, but these remnant people are chosen for a purpose. It's not just a thing. It's not just a good old boys club or anything like that. It is actually something that is chosen for the proper time to do a purpose. Okay? So that's a remnant. Okay? Now, well, all right. Before I get into that, let's look at the verse. I guess I don't have to. The first thing was that the majority doesn't dictate the minority, or because God will always hold that back. So let's look at the verse. Verse 5. Okay? Even so then, all right, at this present time, there is a remnant, or a people left over, chosen for a specific purpose, okay, according to the election of grace. Okay? Okay, so you have a remnant. There's people, all right? That coupled with the structure of the verse talking about an election, okay? Election is the act of God choosing, the act of God choosing or handpicking. I was reading ahead. God choosing or handpicking a specific people for some type of office or some purpose. Okay, the election is God's picking people or hand choosing people to hold a specific office or a certain position. Okay, so if you take the remnant, the leftover people that are called to do what needs to be done at a specific time, that are chosen, and you couple that with election. Election is God hand-picking or choosing somebody to hold a specific office. What office is that? To be a remnant, to be called forth at the proper time. Okay, does that make sense? How those two go together? And it says there also that the remnant, according to the election of grace. Okay, grace is benefit. Grace is reward. Grace is the unmerited favor. Grace is not getting what you deserve, I guess you could say. Grace is the benefit. Grace is the reward. So, given those things, the criteria for God on anybody, whether you're back then an Israelite versus Jew or Gentile, whether you're here now in the body of Christ or not, the criteria is faith. Okay? So there's always going to be, when all the rubber meets the road and everything falls apart, there's always going to be some people left over, chosen by God through His grace for the benefit, in other words, of His work and His plan, or His chosen purpose. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay?
Carry on.
Yeah, to carry on in that purpose. So whatever purpose it is, if man screw it up and it all falls apart, well, God's plan doesn't fall apart, because God's always got that backup plan. He's always got an election of a remnant through His grace to accomplish what He needs to do. Does that make sense? Okay? That's how the structure of that sentence kind of comes together. Does that make sense? Yeah.
It's better. I mean, you read that and you think, what in the world did that just say?
Right.
So that was good.
Yeah. So I mean, so you have to understand that you have to. The words play into. If you know they're kind of like $3 words and you're not sure exactly what they mean, well, that's what they mean. So if you understand what they mean and how they work and play into each other, you'll see that. Coming off of verse 4, when God says, well, I got some guys, and even if things fall apart, I got guys that are going to take over, and I got guys. You're not alone, I got guys that are going to handle it. So you're coming off of that, and it says, even so in verse 5, even so then in our present time, I got some guys. I have some hand-picked guys ready to go to work when it needs to. If everything else, doesn't seem to be playing out, these guys are hand-chosen for a specific purpose for the benefit of everyone and for the benefit of the outfolding of the plan.
So Paul is telling the Israelites this.
Yes.
And using Elijah as an example.
Right. But if you're looking at it in the Israelite people, you have to, I've been describing it kind of in our context, but you have to think of their context. Their context is they're the Israelite people. They think they're the chosen people. They think they're super special. And Paul's coming along saying, guys, you need to understand that we're all on equal footing now. You guys were special because of the law, but then you rejected that. So now we're going on this new program type of a thing. All right? And if you screw it up and it all falls apart, it doesn't mean that God's going to just forget you guys and leave you in the dust. There's still going to be some people left over to carry on in for the benefit of everyone. So God hasn't taken Israel and just throw them out, throw them out. There's always going to be a remnant left. There's always going to be a remnant of them left that God will fulfill his promises in and through.
And these are special people.
These are, yes, and they're special people chosen for the outworking of his purpose. To the Israelite people, that's what we're looking at here. Because, the Israelite people are concerned because some promises were made through Abraham to us about, well, we were going to get this and we were going to get that, and we haven't quite gotten that yet, so now you're telling us that, we're out? Paul's like, no. The majority of you did kind of screw things up, but there's always going to be some left over to pick up and do what needs to be done, and the fulfillment of those promises will come through those people. The blessing is still going to come to those people, okay? And that's where the second thing comes in. The first thing was the majority does not dictate the future, okay? And the second thing is the Lord gave Elijah some work to do. Through a series of events that were put into action or put into play, he was able to punish the wrongdoers and all that kind of stuff and all that kind of do. But he also brought the majority, because if you remember the story of Elijah, the nation of Israel, basically not all of the nation of Israel, but the nation of Israel as a whole was invited up on the mountain, as well as were the prophets of Baal and all that kind of stuff, so that all of the nation of Israel and all of the false prophets from the king would sit there and watch these two altars and see which God answered the call. Okay, so you have God trying to answer the call of both these altars. So the nation of Israel was watching when God shot fire down from Elijah's prayer and did that. Then the nation of Israel woke up and said, "Oh my goodness, that's it." Well, the majority of them had already were not doing what they were supposed to do. You know what I mean? So now they're kind of going, well, now are we out? And Paul's saying, no, even back then, when the majority of you were not following what you were supposed to do, there was still some left over. God said that he's still going to hold some left over. So the true nation of Israel will never go away. And the true nation of Israel is defined by those in faith. Okay? Those in faith. All right? And that's what he's telling us here. Those in faith are going to be doing that. And, those people will be called to do that work, whatever that work may be. Okay? And he encourages them on the third level is that the Lord announced that he's going to preserve people to do this. He's going to preserve 7,000 Israelites who refused to go along with the majority. Okay? Paul recalls the Elijah because most of the people that might be reading this or hearing this, well, not most of them, but some of the people that were reading this, because he doesn't, once again, he's not met these people in Israel. So he's this part is kind of catered a little bit towards the Israelite people, so that they would kind of understand what's going on. And it illustrates God choosing this remnant to carry his plan forward, that he's always got this backup. And it's a reassurance that we need to apply to us today. Israel's not lost. The faithful majority will always stand. We're not lost. The faithful majority will always stand. Or the faithful minority, I guess you could say, will always stand. We need to make sure that, as we read before in earlier chapters, that we have a responsibility to that faith that we have, to be able to share that good news of our faith with other people. That's something we got to do. But if you look at verse 6, verse 6 says, okay, so verse 5 says, in this present time, there is some people that will be left over according to God's choosing for the benefit of all. In verse 6 it says, and if by grace, or if by benefit or reward, if by grace, then it is no longer of works. Otherwise, grace is no longer grace. But if of works, it is no longer of grace. Otherwise, works is no longer works. Now, hopefully you don't get lost in that kind of shuffle.
That's the confusing verse.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. So what he's saying is that if grace is grace and works is works, they stand alone on their own merits. All right? So if you think through the law, through your works, you're going to get what you need to get, then works is works. Okay? It's not grace. Because if you add grace to the works, then works didn't do it on its own. And the same holds true for grace. If grace is grace, then God did it. And it's not about what we're doing to help that happen. We didn't do anything. He did it. So here you can see that grace and works. So the word works means deeds or acts. Okay? And the word grace is the unmerited favor by God. So if it's all God, you can see that he's literally pointing out here that grace and works are two separate things, almost at odds with each other. They're opposites of one another. Okay? He's saying either grace is grace, either God did it all, and you didn't do anything except have faith in it, or works was everything, and God didn't have anything to do with it, is what he's saying. So he's saying, literally, he's saying, if it's grace, if God did it, then works didn't have anything to do with it. Otherwise, God had to have you help him. And if it's works, and you did everything, well, then God didn't have anything to do with it because you didn't need his help in the first place. Does that make sense? So that's what that verse is saying. Saying if it's grace, if it's God, then it's God. If it's you, it's you. All right? So understand that there's a separation there. It's either that, it's either one or the other. It can't be both. You can't pick and choose and kind of put those things together. All right? And then in verse 7 it says, what then? Israel has not obtained what it seeks, but the elect, having obtained it, and the rest are blinded. So right here in verse 7, he says, so if it's of grace, if it's of God, then God did it. Okay? And he says here, if it's of works, if it's of you guys doing what you're doing, then God didn't have anything to do with it. But he says that you guys of works, Israel, hasn't obtained what it seeks. You guys doing whatever you did didn't pay off yet. It's not there. You haven't done it. Okay? And then he says, but the elect, the people that God chose, he uses that word elect because those are the people that God handpicked, hand chose for a specific purpose to hold a specific office. So he used that word elect again. So if you are the one that did it, then you'd be okay. But it's saying there that you haven't reached, Israel hasn't gotten what they're seeking. You haven't reached what you're doing. All the works that you've done haven't gotten you where you need to go. But the elect, the people that God chose through their faith, those guys got what they were looking for. Those guys got it. Why? Because God gave it to them. That's God's grace. He had given them what they don't deserve, but he gave it to them. God was a part of it, and God did it all. So you see that God's there. He says, but the elect have attained it, and the rest, all right, and the rest of the people, they're blinded, all right? The word blinded, the word comes from, the word is poros, which is a kind of a rock, or a kind of a stone, is what that means. It comes from, actually it's poro is the word, blinded, but it comes from poros, which is like a rock. It means like a heavy callus. You know what I mean? Like when I was managing restaurants, I managed restaurants for years and years and years. People would go up and grab plates to go take to other people, but sometimes those plates would be hot. They'd be sitting under a heat lamp or something like that. They'd be hot, and you go grab that plate, and some people are like, "Ow, that's hot!" They'd have to go get like a napkin or something to grab that thing up. But I've been doing it for years, man. I built calluses right through here, just right in this part. All right, so I could grab those things, and I didn't feel it because I got that thick callus right there. You know what I mean? Same thing holds true for these. He says they're blinded. It's like they have that callus. The word comes from like stone. They've got this heavy callus or this heavy blinders on, and they can't see. All they keep thinking is, I got to do. And they haven't gotten where they need to be. All right, but in contrast, the elect, the ones God chose, well, they got what they need. All right, does that make sense? Not? Any
I
questions?
think a lot of people these days still do the works and the grace, which, you know, you got the
Right.
people trying to do that, and it just doesn't mix, the law and the
Right.
grace.
Yeah, people kind of miss that concept, and I think that's why it's so important, is because God's grace is imparted to you. God's got all the authority. I have no authority. Okay? God imparts through my faith in Him, through my belief in Him, through my acceptance in Him, in Christ. He imparts that grace to me, that authority to me, and makes me righteous, wipes me clean, and makes me righteous. Now, I don't have that authority on my own. It's just imparted to me. It's given to me. It's imposed to me. Okay? And so then I have it. All right? Now, because I have it, the byproduct of me having that grace should be that I want to do good stuff. And the stuff that I do now actually is worth something. Okay? Imagine a chef, somebody who cooks really great food, really likes food, really does a great job cooking food, and they are really good at it, but when they go to cook their food, their hands are completely filthy dirty. And they're, it's covered in mud, who knows what else stuff, and they cook your food, and then they serve it to you. I mean, it may look great, it may be made with all the seasonings that and stuff like that, but it's tainted. I mean, your hands are filthy dirty. You just made all my food. I'm supposed to eat that? You just made my food with dirty hands, right? Okay, well, that's the thing. If you had somebody who was completely clean to prepare your food for you, the byproduct of that would be something worthwhile. So a lot of people find that same kind of connection. They think, well, as long as I do good things, as long as I can use the right words or do the right things, it'll come out and it'll be fine. All right? But the thing is, you're dirty, you're filthy. Whatever you're doing is going to be tainted. All right? And unedible. But when Christ wipes you clean, and you're clean, and you do those things, it may look exactly the same as this guy's, but it's not tainted. It's not corrupted by that sin or by that filth. And it's safe to consume. Does that make sense? So that's what we're talking about here. I think people do get that confused because they think, well, if I just do good stuff. Well, just because you're doing good stuff doesn't mean that what you're doing is not tainted and it's not clean. All right? You may be trying to do more than what I'm doing. But what I'm doing is just a byproduct of my cleanliness, of God washing me clean. And anything that I do now is not tainted by that sin, that corruption. What you do may be nice and all, but in the end it's corrupted, it's tainted. And it's going to have no value because in the end it's not going to be able to be something that people can take in or eat or digest. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. I know. Okay, good. Any other questions? Oh, yeah, I'm looking at you, Sherry. All right. No, not yet. Okay, good. I hope that made sense to you. I hope that will made sense to you. Okay, right on. 7 through 14. That's a long chunk. That is a long chunk. We're gonna do it though. So 7 through 14. This is through the rest of this little section that we're gonna do right here. Grace, verse 6. If by grace it is no longer works, otherwise grace is no longer grace. But if it is works, it is no longer grace. Otherwise works is no longer works. Verse 7, then Israel has not obtained what it seeks, but the elect have obtained it, and the rest are blinded. Verse 8, just as it is written, God has given them the spirit of stupor, eyes that should not see, and ears that should not hear, to this very day. And David says, let their table become a snare and a trap and a stumbling block, and a trap, a snare and a trap, a stumbling block and recompense to them. Let their eyes be darkened, so that they do not see and bow down their back away. And bow down their back away. Always. Back always. Man, I can't read. And I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? Certainly not. But through their fall, to provoke them to jealousy, salvation has come to the Gentiles. Now, if their fall is riches for the world, and their failure riches for the Gentiles, how much more their fullness? For I speak to you Gentiles, insomuch as I am the apostle to the Gentiles, I magnify my ministry. But verse 14, if by any means I may provoke to jealousy those who are my flesh, are of my flesh, and save some of them. Okay. This is a big chunk right here, because it talks about lots of different things. It has a couple different quotes in there and that type of thing. So Paul's identifying basically a smaller group within Israel, a remnant, okay, like the true nation of Israel, a smaller group of people that are going to be chosen for a specific thing, against the rebellious majority, okay? They're going to be a minority, but they're the ones, all right? Paul establishes a second helpful distinction here, and we mentioned it before. Paul talks about two different concepts, and that's discipline and punishment. Okay, Paul's talking about two different things here, two very helpful distinctions: discipline versus punishment. The difference is very, very subtle, but it's huge. Okay, between discipline and punishment. In the Bible, punishment is a matter of justice. Okay, punishment is a matter of justice. Okay, if a person has to suffer the consequences of their sin, if a person makes a choice, a sinful choice, they have to suffer the consequences of that sin, then that is that justice. It's that eternal separation from God. It's that eternal torment. It's that's what a punishment is. A punishment is punitive. It's retributive. It's a consequence. I can't think of a better word. It's a consequence for the choice of what you're doing. That's a punishment. On the other side, discipline is a matter of sanctification. All right? Sanctification is the idea that you're separated apart from other people for a purpose. Okay? So discipline is a matter of sanctification, and whether it's good or bad, no matter what the choice, no matter what the outcome is good or bad, God is utilizing that instance to be able to help you and to grow you and mature you. Okay? That's discipline. Okay? If your child goes and is playing with another child, and that person's playing with a toy, and your child comes and takes that toy from them, okay, you would go over them and you would discipline them, because they probably don't know better, and you would say, look, that you need to learn how to share, and you start working over some different concepts to get that child to understand why you don't just go and take something from somebody else. Okay? All right? You don't understand this? Well, I'm going to teach you these things. There's such a thing as, he's playing with it. He's the one that's using it. There's such thing as sharing. There's such thing as asking. There's such thing as please and thank you. And you're starting to teach them and stuff. You discipline them because they did something wrong so that they understand what they did was wrong. But there's also a teaching element that goes along with that. If a person goes into a grocery store with a gun and says, give me all your money, all right, there's going to be punishment for that choice. Why is the two different? One is a teaching moment, gained to get you to understand and appreciate certain concepts as it would benefit yourself and those around you. The other one is a direct response to your action. Okay? Given the idea that you know what your action is. If you're going in, if you walked into a grocery store and said, give me all your money, and they would look at you and go, no, all right? then that means you just don't understand the concept. Nobody's just going to hand over their money to you in the grocery store. But if you go in there with a gun in your hand and say, "Give me all your money," you obviously know that you have to incentivize them to be able to give that money to you. So obviously you know that what you're doing is not right. Okay? So in that instance, justice must come into play. Okay? There's no distinction. Paul's trying to make this clear that there's no distinction between Jews and Gentiles. Everybody is basically a remnant, or not a remnant, but the election of people is based off of God's choice. We went over that before in when we were talking about predestination and stuff like that. God just has chosen some people, and He's hardened some people. I mean, that's just what He does. He chose some people to be part of this group. He chose these people to harden these other people. He did both for a specific purpose. He did it both for a reason. He did both as a learning tool for those who were around, for that person and for the people around it. That's what God does. So the blessings of salvation are both for Jews and for Gentiles. Curses are both for Jews and Gentiles. There is no, you got to understand that there's a difference between punishment and discipline. Okay? It doesn't fall upon one group over another, or one situation over another, or anything. It just is what it is. Discipline and punishment also fall upon the elect too. Okay? Suppose you're in a classroom. I'm using kids. I'm thinking about kids, I guess. You're in a classroom, and you're sitting there, and you're being quiet. And you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And some kids are screwing around over here. And the teacher comes in and sees these guys making noise and screwing around and stuff like that. And what do? All right, they come in and go, "All right, I want to have quiet amongst the whole class." Well, I wasn't doing anything. Everybody else could be hanging from the chandeliers. I don't know what they're doing, but I was just sitting here. I'm not doing anything. So sometimes even punishment can be served upon even those who may be of what we consider a remnant or something like that, or an elect type of a scenario, okay? Because that's just how things kind of play out here. But at the present time, the whole Hebrew race is under discipline, okay? The whole of the human race is under discipline, the elect and not the elect, okay? And Paul's trying to get them to understand that this isn't punishment as a consequence for your action. This isn't justice that God's seeking out on you. It's discipline, okay? And discipline is being served out over the whole of everybody, okay? So even those who are the elect, even those that might be the remnant, even those people who are chosen for a specific purpose, they're getting lumped in with everybody else because it's being served upon everyone. Okay? And there's a benefit to that, of course. If you have two kids, one kid is very well behaved, the other kid is not very well behaved, and you have one set of rules for both of them. One follows those rules very easily, and the other one doesn't follow the rules. Do you change the rules to cater to either one of the kids? Well, the answer you would say in your head is no, but you did. Okay? If this kid's not misbehaving, you might give them more responsibility. You might give them more leeway because they're a good kid and they're not going to do crazy things. They understand what they're supposed to do. This kid, on the other hand, you would not. You would lock it down. You may even give them extra rules because they are misbehaving. Okay? But the truth is, you should treat both of them the same way. Now, human nature thinks of it the way I just explained it, and so did the nation of Israel. The nation of Israel is like, well, it seems like you're making new rules for the Gentiles. It seems like you're, now all of a sudden they're the cool kids on the block. All of a sudden now you're making up special rules for them, and we were supposed to be the ones that were the good kids that you're supposed to take care of. And he's saying, no, we're not talking about punishment, all right? We're talking about discipline, okay? And discipline holds everybody accountable to the same standard, okay? So even those who might be chosen are still going to be held to that standard. The benefit to that is that whether you're misbehaving or whether you're paying attention to the rules, you both understand what the rules are equally. There isn't different rules for either person. You get to hear it and get to experience it together on an equal basis, okay? One may, because of that discipline, one may be more severe on one than another because of your willingness to adhere to the discipline, okay? But the rules are the same and the discipline's the same. Does that make sense? Oh, I hope that makes sense. I'm not trying to lose you on that one. Okay, good. So here, verse 8, Paul draws on an Old Testament history to show the kind of discipline that's consistent with God's relationship with Israel in history. And he quotes Deuteronomy 29:4 in verse 8. Verse 8 says, God has given them the spirit of stupor, eyes that they should not see, and ears that they should not hear, to this very day. All right? So Deuteronomy 29:4-6 says, Yet to this day the Lord has not given you a heart to know, nor eyes to see, nor ears to hear. I have led you 40 years in the wilderness. Your clothes have not worn out on you, and your sandals have not worn out on your feet. You have not eaten bread, nor have you drinking wine or strong drink, in order that you might know that I am the Lord your God. So he quotes this passage there to make sure that they understand the concept of their discipline that was given to them from not reaching the promised land, because that's part of their history. Okay? God didn't bring them to the promised land and they said, well, we don't want to go in there. And he said, forget it then, you're out of here. No. He disciplined them. So for 40 years they wandered around. A whole generation fell away. And then a new generation was given the opportunity to get into the promised land, which they did. All right? So this is the same kind of thing with this discipline versus punishment. If it was punishment, I'd just be kicking you to the curb and that'd be it. But that's not what's happening here. It is a disciplinary action that he's utilizing here when he quotes Deuteronomy 29:4-6. I guess it's Deuteronomy 4. I read 4-6.
But wasn't that a punishment for Israel, for those that didn't get to go into the promised land?
Well, yes and no. Because if you remember the story, they brought 12 to go into the land. And 12 came back, and 10 said, don't go in, and 2 said, no, it's cool. We should just rely on God. Well, who got disciplined? All 12. Even though there was 2 that said it would be okay to go into the promised land and it would be fine. You get what I mean?
True,
they all had to pay the price. You get what I mean? So he disciplined them for 40 years to wander around, and that one generation fell away. Now, there's a benefit to that, and there's a help for that, and there's a benefit for that on both sides. In that particular instance where there's 10 that said, no, don't do it, and 2 that said yes, they all were disciplined in the same way, and there's a benefit for that to the elect, to the ones that did want to do the right thing or whatnot. It demonstrated God's faithful provision and his ability to take care of those people, because God didn't just say, oh man, you screwed up, you're out of here, go wander around the desert. That whole concept of them wandering around the desert is kind of a misnomer, because they didn't wander around in the desert. God led them around the desert. And as he led them around the desert, he fed them, and he watered them, and he made sure their clothes didn't wear out, and he made sure that their sandals didn't. Imagine the clothes that you're wearing right now, and I wear flip-flops. This is probably like the 100th pair of flip-flops I've ever had in my life, because they all seem to wear out over time. All right? Sandals never wore out. Clothes never wore out. Nothing ever wore out. You were always being fed. God continued. For the elect, for the people that were faithful, the faithful few, God provided for them, and it was a show to them that God will continue to provide for them, even when you're in the middle of discipline. God's still there for you. God's still providing for you, and you can still trust in God. To the lost people, it provided an opportunity for them to repent. Okay, for the 10 that said no, don't go, this 40 years of wandering around was the perfect opportunity for them to go, you know what, maybe I screwed up. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should not sin. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. That's what that discipline is about. If it's punishment, it doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what you're doing. This is what's going to happen. You know? You get what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's that's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a good question. But it affects everybody as a whole. Discipline. You know what I mean? We are out of time. I'll have to go into verse 9 later.
Look, where in Deuteronomy was that? I was looking while you were
Deuteronomy
talking.
29,
Ah.
4.
Well, I scoured Deuteronomy 4, didn't find it.
Oh,
That's
Deuteronomy
why I
29,
just
4.
asked. Okay, I heard
Yeah,
it 4.
yeah,
Okay.
29, 4.
All right, sorry.
Deuteronomy 29, 4. Okay, we'll pick up on this, starting, I guess, in verse 9. We didn't get all the way through that, but we'll be able to keep going through that. Hopefully that made some sense to you. I know that was a lot. It might have been a lot for you, Sarah, because you're kind of coming in on this. And there's a lot. We've gone through 10 whole chapters before we got here. So, I mean, hopefully I didn't lose you too much on that. And that type of thing. Okay? Any other thoughts or comments or questions? No? Okay, well then let's pray and we'll be done. Dear Lord, thank you for this time that we could be here together and look inside your word and just kind of gain a better understanding of what it's trying to tell us and how it's helpful to us. Dear Lord, it's good to know that that you are that you have the supreme ability to look over everything, that you're sovereign to be able to orchestrate everything to work out for your plan and your good pleasure. And dear Lord, I am thankful that I get to be part of it. You have given us the ability through faith in your Son, Jesus Christ, to be part of your family, part of your plan, part of your outworking. And we're super thankful that that becomes part of who we are, and our identity comes from you. So, dear Lord, thank you so much for this. Help it to just kind of help stir us and help us to remember how wondrous it is to be part of your body of Christ. Thank you so much, and we ask in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen.